What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All-NBA show powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/All-NBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, hosted over at the Volume Hoops Tonight, and getting ready to fly back. Planes, trains, and automobiles around the holiday season. It's Jason Timpf. JT, how was your Christmas?
It was great, man. Merry Christmas to you and your family. Doing Christmas as a visitor to my hometown has been a bizarre experience. It's like so itinerary heavy because we have so many friends and family we want to see. So I was, lamenting to my mom this morning. It's been like one of the most exhausting Christmas weeks that I've had, but it's been great to see everybody. Obviously, I love Denver, but I miss my friends and family. And boy, did the basketball gods give us some great basketball yesterday.
I don't know if that means it was a good thing or bad thing for you, because I know for me, I was talking to producer James before. The game started at 10 o'clock local, and they ended at midnight. So that was a very long day of basketball with no break. But they were good games. I mean, sometimes it's like, all right, I'm going to catch the important part of this game and tune out for a little bit. There wasn't much opportunity yesterday, man. 5 games, 3 of them fantastic, 2 of them at least narratively interesting. I mean, the NBA got what they wanted out of Christmas, and the NFL slate kind of sucked. So this was, I feel like it was a big win for the NBA.
Yeah, it was like a confluence of a bunch of events because you have the NFL kind of just butting out inadvertently through all the injuries and the teams that haven't materialized into playoff threats. And then you have Oklahoma City, who's almost been so good it made the league seem not as interesting this year because they're a bad combination of dominant and boring. And then you add this San Antonio thing, and it just suddenly just adds this whole new layer of intrigue. And like you said, like every game was either like a crazy, fascinating, close, entertaining basketball game like the Knicks Cavs game, or narratively interesting like that Lakers Rockets game. So just lots to talk about today.
And I'm going to start here. I think that the NBA, and I don't even know if they totally expected this going in, but they got 2 games of what I think are the best 2 rivalries in the NBA right now. And look, I know people always roll their eyes when you say rivalries. Nothing's like the Pistons and the Bulls of yesteryear. Like, look, man, put all that aside. Just talk about right now. If you tell me 2 teams are going to play and it's going to be a great game with bad blood and good matchups and everything else, you can't do better right now than the Thunder and the Spurs. I mean, that is an absolute rivalry, even though it's really only a handful of games deep. I know they've played contentious games in years past, but it's never been this like where they're on a collision course for each other. We're getting that right now. And then the Nuggets and the Timberwolves it goes back 4 seasons now where they've met in the playoffs, high stakes game 7s. There's people from the Nuggets organization now in Minnesota and vice versa. So you get this, to me, these 2 rivalries are very real and they kind of deliver every single time right now. I think the NBA needs to lean into those 2 rivalries because there's a very good chance we're going to see a playoff series with these teams involved.
Yeah, the NBA regular season lacks that urgency and it's so hard to replicate it. And if you want basketball players to play with real urgency, you need one of 2 things. You need stakes, or you need hate. You need real, just like good old fashioned, deep seated hate. And like you need Victor Wembanyama celebrating a missed Chet free throw. You need there has to be something that drives it. And like you can just tell there's a familiarity, a deep familiarity through just recent, 3 games in 2 weeks or whatever for the Thunder and the Spurs, and through the Wolves and the Nuggets, a combination of playing a ton over the last couple years and the Nuggets being the better team, but the Wolves having this like kind of mental edge over them that the Nuggets seem to have kind of shrugged off a little bit this year. They've kind of flipped the script on that in their matchups this season. And so I think that kind of has the more of that kind of thing we have in the NBA regular season, the better, because that's the kind of thing that's going to drive, high effort and intensity during a boring 82 game regular season.
And I think the NBA and all of the media partners, including us, It's like our job to build these things up. One of the reasons I think people talk about there not being great rivalries is the biggest media partners don't always see them until it's too late. And I think that this is right now. It's like, hey guys, no, these are rivalries. You need to lean in. This is how people remember them, as the buildup of a rivalry, all the little narratives around it that you build up. And I think that the NBA is in a prime position. And by the way, the Western Conference, I've been saying it, it's a lock now. It is going to be a bloodbath this year. Because there's by the way, you got those two teams, right, that have a rivalry. Denver, Oklahoma City met in the playoffs last year. Houston kind of has a rivalry, a budding rivalry with everybody. And then you got the Lakers in there who everybody hates. This is just going to be every matchup in the West, every round, every matchup right now is going to have some kind of storyline. And I just think that we're very lucky. And there's going to be some disappointed teams. I was talking to James. 2 of these teams are going to go home in the first round. Oklahoma City, San Antonio, Denver, Houston, Minnesota, LA. 2 of those teams are not making it out of the first round. So it's going to be absolutely intense, as we saw last night. So we're going to get into it, and we're going to start. There's 2 games we're going to break down today, but we're going to start with our FanDuel game breakdown of the late game last night, and that was Denver and Minnesota. You flip a coin for what you thought was the best game, because there was some, the Cavs had a really big game. Even the Thunder, even though that game was a bit of a blowout for San Antonio, it still was a fantastic game because of what it meant. But we're going to start with the one that went to overtime and featured some monster performances, including one by Nikola Jokic, 56 points, 16 rebounds, 15 assists. Stat lines that don't make sense. It's hard to believe that they're even real. He set an NBA record 18 points in overtime, but what stands out to me is that Denver controlled the game. And they, despite being down 3 starters to the first game, they got the news Cam Johnson will be out 4 to 6 weeks before he's reevaluated. It's a huge blow. Already down Christian Brown and Aaron Gordon. But this was a game where I thought Denver had control, and that's meaningful because Minnesota's been a tough matchup, but Denver did what they needed to do to build a big lead. But then in the fourth quarter, Anthony Edwards starts guarding Jamal Murray. They, instead of having Rudy Gobert on Jokic, they switched, put Jaden McDaniels on Jokic, and it seemed to be this move that almost checkmated Denver. They got all the way back from 14 points down to tie the game on an Anthony Edwards three-pointer. That comeback to me was as meaningful as Denver building a lead. What do you think?
Yeah, it's been interesting when these 2 teams have matched up over the years. It's always been like a landslide one way or another. It's not like they're just swapping lead changes every 5 seconds. Yeah. They even dating back to that playoff series, it's like Minnesota dominates the first 2 games, and then Denver dominates the next 3 games, and then Minnesota beats the crap out of them in game 6. Yeah. And then the Nuggets are up 20-something in the third quarter of game 7. And then the Wolves, and like, that's kind of what last night was like. It felt like Denver was completely in control. Minnesota has been kind of inconsistent with their defensive effort and execution all season. It's been kind of a weird thing for them. And I think that's kind of more or less part of their personality. I think they're going to be one of those teams over the course of this era that's going to consistently be somewhere in that like 4 to 6 range in the standings, but that you always have to take a little bit more seriously as a playoff threat, because it's just kind of more or less their personality defensively. But they can ratchet it up. And I mean, that Anthony Edwards on Jamal Murray piece, that's reminiscent of game 7.
That's why it's huge.
Because like in that matchup, Jamal had like 35 or something, and then Ant just shut him down in that second half run. And honestly, like the part that really stood out to me, this Minnesota offense, when Ant, there's another layer to Ant's offense this year in terms of variety. He's taking 2 less threes a game, but he's taking a few more shots in each little area, whether it's the short range, the mid range, the rim. He's more patient and more efficient in his rim attacks, and he's just become so much more dynamic on offense. And he can get into these runs as a jump shooter where you just have to cross your fingers and pray he misses, because he gets such great lift. And he's such a good 3-point shooter. And like that turnaround over his right shoulder in the corner, you can't guard that any better. The drop coverage shot that he hits at the top of the key in OT, like he's elevating from 26 feet and his release point is 9 feet off the ground. Like, what are you going to do? And it's just a reminder that like Minnesota, they have like a punch, a level that they can get to that's so devastating. But the flip side of that is, we are literally watching the greatest basketball player of this era, this 2020s era. We're watching him at the absolute peak of his powers, and he is playing a level of basketball that even he has never reached. Jamal Murray's averaging like 30 points a game over the course of this last couple of weeks on 50, 40, 90. He's been unbelievable. This is this duo, we're going to talk about the Lakers and their roster. There's a lot of Lakers fans lamenting their roster today. Denver wasn't marching out a great roster yesterday. They gave up an 18-0 run when Jokic left the floor. Those two guys backpacked the team to a win. And it's a reminder that, like, when you have top-end talent that can reach that level, it can cover for a lot in this league.
And top-end talent that fits together, and that's what makes the Murray-Jokic two-man game so deadly, is they can do everything. And in fact, that's why last night's game was so meaningful in both directions. For one, the two-man game did get stymied for a good portion in that fourth quarter. I thought Denver went a little bit to the prevent offense a little too early. I mean, Jokic goes into clock wasting time. They're rolling the ball up the court. They're walking it up and wasting clock and then getting bad shots out of it. But one of the things that you tip your hat to Minnesota was when they made that adjustment, rather than have Gobert or some other big in that pick and roll where now you're scrambling and Denver just knows how to attack it, they put Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards on the action because they can switch that. And even though neither of those guys can guard Jokic well, it does make it easier to read what's going to happen. You're not going to go to the Jamal Murray option. They're going to have a good defender on Jamal Murray, and the defense can kind of load up. Denver got some shots to their other guys in the fourth quarter that all missed. A lot to Spencer Jones, Peyton Watson, I think Tim Hardaway Jr. even. And it was like, okay, anybody but those two, and it didn't work. And Denver altered their two-man game then to kind of pop Jokic a little bit higher. Say, okay, instead of rolling him down where they're sitting and waiting for him or trying to post him up, let's pick and pop and see what happens. And it was still effective. Denver still struggled a little bit with it, even though they both of those guys came up with some big-time shots. But it's important to me because, one, the psychological edge that Minnesota has had historically of guarding Murray with Anthony Edwards. Jamal Murray had two huge three-pointers right in his eye late in the game, one in regulation, one in overtime. And then on top of that, just finding different ways, different looks in the same action that do not involve the other three guys, do not get Jokic rolling to the basket, but get something else somewhere else on the court. The fact that Denver was able to do that to me is very important because that was the mental edge Minnesota had kind of taken from Denver, and Denver was able to execute it now in the clutch and in overtime to get a win, and it's just further proof that they are over the mental hurdle that was the Timberwolves for the last 2 years.
Yeah, the two things that I noticed too with Jokic with that coverage, Jokic was hitting threes in the switch interchange, which is like, they would be point switching and there'd be like kind of a gap between the switch actually taking place. And Jokic's three-point shooting has just been a revelation this year. He was just nails over and over again down the stretch of that game. And then the second thing, just going right at Jaden and like instead of over-penetrating and going all the way to the rim, going to his short-range shot making. And he's, his touch is all worldly, and he just kept kind of getting to that little hook or floater there in the middle of the floor, just going through Jaden. And that ended up being something that he was able to go to in overtime with great success. And so, again, like to your point, like it's the entire Jokic-Murray era has been about solving puzzles as teams throw different janky coverages at them to try to solve the situation. And over again, they've just been able to find the solution.
And that's exactly what it was last night, a new solution to an old problem. And that's what gives you some encouragement. But here's the thing about Jokic. He is shooting a career-high 5 threes a game this year, and he's making a career-high 44%. We're 30 games into the season, so this is not a small sample size. We're talking about, let me see what the total number of threes Jokic has taken so far this year. He's taken 153, so it's a good sample size that we're dealing with here. And then on top of that, you go back to last year where he shot 41%. This is a year and 30 games of him shooting the three-point shot at a high efficiency rate. And I think it's, if you look at Denver this year and why they're off to such a good start, the depth is obviously a huge reason. Jamal Murray's spring and the season he's having, by far the best of his career. I think he's a clear all-star right at this very moment. Like not a bubble all-star, he's a clear all-star. So you got those two things, but I think a sneaky third one is that Jokic's three-point shot has made him completely unstoppable because he's been good from everywhere, but the three is the one you're going to live with. I don't think you can live with the three-point shot. Jokic, especially against the best teams, he has his focus on his three-point shot, and he makes them at a great rate. And that happened last night, 4 of 6. When you have a Gobert or somebody like that and the ability to pick and pop and just put him in an uncomfortable spot, it's a checkmate.
Yeah, you mentioned it earlier. That's always been Jokic's counter to teams really swarming him on rolls, like really swarming him on rolls. And, he had that 1 year, 2024, was it? Yeah, where like he just didn't shoot the ball super well down the stretch. And that ended up being part of the issue in the Wolves series. He just couldn't make a three. Yep. And he missed, what was he, 2 for 10 or something like that in game 7 from 3. Right. I remember that was kind of the issue. And, you know, he had a wrist issue, if I'm not mistaken. You probably have more insight on that than I do, but I know he had like a wrist issue that year as well, which was affecting his follow through. And just having that piece, it's just given him that extra like card in his deck to be able to play in those situations. And having Murray at this level, I think is especially important because, I mean, he's certainly an all-star this year, but like he's been playing at closer to an all NBA level over the last couple of weeks too. Like he's legitimately been one of the very best guards in the league. And again, there's this dynamic that they've been able to replicate some stuff with guys out of the lineup. Like Peyton Watson can bring some of the athleticism and defense. And by the way, we have to shout out Peyton. He was getting absolutely fried by Ant down the stretch of this game, but he did make a massive play in OT when he tagged that roller and got that big steal. I thought that was like a classic example for young basketball players out there. You're having a bad moment, you're getting cooked, just find a way to make a play. And he made one play, ended up being one of the big kind of swing factors in that overtime portion of that game. But like they have guys that can kind of sort of slot into spots. Like I think Tim Hardaway Jr., he didn't shoot super well yesterday, but he's given that counterbalance to Jamal Murray as like that second knockdown shooter on the floor at all times that kind of gives you that extra outlet in those situations. And he did hit a huge transition 3 in overtime that was a big kind of lead changing. I think cut it to from 6 to 3, if I remember correctly. But they're dealing with some significant deficits all over the floor. Jonas Valanciunas had a really rough game last night. You know, like Spencer was struggling to knock down shots down the stretch of that game. They desperately needed their stars to be great last night, and they were able to get to that level. And I just can't say enough about him, Adam. Like, I mean, what is it like, man? What's it like watching the best player in the world and rooting for him at the peak of his powers? I miss it. It's been like 6 years for me since I've seen that.
It makes it frustrating because like when he has nights like he did, and really wasn't even nights. It was a half, the first half that he had against the Dallas Mavericks a couple nights before, and this is the curse of watching Jokic. In that game, he had a horrible first half. He finished with 29, 7, and 14. A pretty good stat line was a +2, and they lost the game in part because he didn't go for 56, 16, and 15, right? Like you watch him and you see a performance like this and you almost go like, we want it every night. But of course it's unrealistic to put up Wilt Chamberlain numbers every single night. But yeah, he's just amazing, man. And the Nuggets right now, why this game was so important. One, they hadn't beaten the Wolves in the regular season in 2 years. They're now 3-0 against them. And the 3-0 is important because that means they have tiebreaker. So they are effectively 4 games up on the Timberwolves in the standing, 3 in the loss column, then plus that tiebreaker because if they finish with the same number of losses, Denver will get the edge. I just think that's huge. It's weird to be doing that kind of stuff this early in the season, but sometimes you play teams early in the year. This year, Denver, Minnesota matched up early in the year, but that tie-breaking edge and the mental edge of saying, yes, we beat you now 3 different times. Once, by the way, down 3 starters. And it wasn't like they had time to adjust to being with these guys out of the lineup. Cam going out, they threw out a lineup last night. They didn't know what it was. And so to get a win, to me, it's very, very meaningful. And if I'm Minnesota, I walk away with that game at least a little encouraged because they were able to come back. They were able to stymie the 2-man game to some degree. So I think it's one of those ones where both sides feel good about, but Denver pulling it out after going down 9 in the fourth quarter is just, they needed a win like that. They needed a clutch win.
To your point, I think the Lakers are the only team that leaves yesterday feeling like crap because like the Cavs did a lot. We're talking about like the Cavs actually felt, you know, that they kind of looked like the Cavs for stretches yesterday. Like Dallas, Anthony Davis goes down and they're just not as good without him, but Cooper Flagg continues to look excellent. You know, Minnesota, I think, you know, to the point about the rivalry, you got to have advantages over your opponent. Like Minnesota has clear advantages over Denver. That's what allows them to be competitive in this matchup. Like all of these teams have, and Oklahoma City, I guess they're losers of 4 out of 6, but they're good. Like they're essentially guaranteed a Western Conference Finals berth unless San Antonio slips. So like they're unless Denver, we'll see. Unless Denver, we'll see. But the point being, Oklahoma City, I mean, I'm no one's going to be pitying them today. Let's just put it that way. Yeah. But there were a lot of like optimistic losers yesterday, and I thought Minnesota was one of them. Like once again, like they were right there. They were right there. You know, a couple things go differently. Like Rudy Gobert had a pretty easy tip in overtime that he missed. There were some things that could have gone the other way, and Minnesota could have won that game. So like a lot of reasons to be optimistic on that front. I still view them as like a much better team than they appear in the standings at this point.
The Timberwolves, to me, they're right there, man. They're right there in the mix. So I'm with you on it. They do have.
Dude, and how great is Ant, dude? How great is Ant?
We do have to give him a shout.
Was.
We have to give him a shout out because when he got in the zone in that fourth quarter, just a hyper competitor, taking on a tough defensive assignment and executing it phenomenally, and then still having the stamina and energy to go full bore on the other end and hit the big shots. It was a show, man. For a while there, it was a Jokic, Anthony Edwards battle. You know, they're not necessarily guarding each other, but going back, just seeing who could come up more clutch. And it was incredible, man. Just an absolute.
Anticlaus. You see the comments?
Yeah, Anticlaus. Yeah, I like it. Anticlaus, man. It was great. Let's take a break, though, because we have so many games, JT. This one was great. We could talk another 20 minutes for it, but we want to take a break and get to the other big game last night, which is, of course, the Spurs beating the Thunder for the third time in 12 days. We'll get to that on the other side. Fast breaks, buzzer beaters, and block parties are back, and Underdog is the best place to get in on all of the action. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like points, rebounds, steals, and more. You get your picks right, you can win up to 5,000 times cash. Tonight on Underdog, what am I looking at? Zion Williamson, 20.5 points, higher. Brandon Ingram, 24.5 points, higher. Those are the two I'm going with. You can download the app today. Use promo code ALLNBA to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's promo code ALLNBA. Underdog. Make picks, win money. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Also want to tell you guys about Shopify. What kind of dreams did you have when you were a kid? What did you want to be when you grew up? Well, for me, it was a podcast host, or at least a sports analyst, and then podcasting became invented, and that's where I went. So how about you? If you're thinking about starting your own business, you got to know about Shopify. Shopify is the e-commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the U.S. Shopify even powers the All City merch store. Shopify has you covered with website creation, product description, email, and social media marketing, and more. They also have AI tools designed to help you maximize sales. If you're ready to sell, you're ready for Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial. That's $1 per month. And start selling at shopify.com/allcity. That's shopify.com/allcity. All righty, we're back here, segment 2, me and Jason Timpf. So we got to get into this other game now. Spurs Thunder, 117-102, and I have to start with an apology. I was wrong about something. On this show, I've complained maybe 2, maybe 3 times about the schedule where teams play each other 2-3 times in a row in short order, because it just seems silly that you would have these, you get the excitement of a game and then you do it over and over again. It's like, all right, we're losing something here. I'm wrong. This has worked out perfectly, just injecting life into the season. The fact that San Antonio and Oklahoma City have played 3 times, all of them felt big. The NBA Cup game, the one on Tuesday maybe felt the smallest, but it was big because Oklahoma City or San Antonio smacked them. And so last night felt like it was very meaningful for the Thunder. Is this real? Does San Antonio have your number? And the answer is absolutely yes. 117-102, despite the fact that Wemby is still on this minutes restriction, only plays 26 minutes, and they just controlled it. And more importantly, 41 points in the first quarter against that monster Oklahoma City defense. And Oklahoma City, for their offense that is a metronome and just scores the same way every single time, no matter who you put out there, they can't score on this Spurs team. A 108 offensive rating through 3 games where they average a 121 offensive rating. That is huge. And now the narrative is set. The Thunder are vulnerable, and the Spurs might be just the best team in the NBA. What do you take away from this monster win from the Spurs last night?
Well, first of all, I love these stacked games too. That breeds the hatred, Adam. That breeds.
You're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
It builds these rivalries up. So we got to dig into both ends of the floor, because you mentioned the fact that Oklahoma City can't score. This is statistically the most dominant defense in the history of the NBA by relative defensive rating, and the Spurs are hanging a 120 offensive rating against them.
Easy
in 144 minutes of action. They're cutting this defense to pieces. So the dynamic on when the Spurs are on defense is really simple, actually. Wemby is this game-breaking rim protector, and Luke Cornett has been playing very well at the rim defensively as well. So you're getting 48 minutes of awesome rim protection, and then they're so big and athletic on the perimeter that they can really press up on these shots. One of the interesting dynamics with the Thunder as a catch and shoot team this year is they're the 5th best unguarded catch and shoot team in the league. If you leave them open, they're going to knock shots down, but they are the 2nd worst guarded catch and shoot team in the league. So if you can get contests on their shots, you can play them into misses. And over the course of this week, they've shot well over 40% from 3 when they've been unguarded off the catch. But they have shot incredibly poorly on contested catch and shoot threes this week. We have to give credit to the Spurs and the job that they've done to make the Thunder miss shots. It also has led J-Dub and Shea in particular to settle for a lot of pull-up jump shots, which they have not been making. Shea just played his worst game of the season by far yesterday. So the defense is that simple dynamic. Rim protection, which has weaponized their athletes out towards the perimeter, which has made them worse as jump shooting teams. On the offensive end, this is where I get really fascinated, Adam.
Well, can I hold on real quick?
Go ahead. Let's stay on defense.
Before we flip that, I want to get into one specific thing about the Spurs' defense, and that is one of the big differences that I'm crediting Shea with being better than last year when he won the MVP, and I think he's had a better season so far, is his three-point shooting has seemed to be more deadly. He has the weird shot to him that I think makes him great in the mid-range, but when you extend it out to the three-point line, he loves the step back so much, and then his shot kind of comes kind of low. It's almost a push shot in some ways that you wonder, can it be extended to the three-point line? He's done a great job of that this year, but not against the Spurs. And I don't think it's a coincidence. He had 3 bad shooting nights. He likes to put the pressure on you going forward, and the 3 is his counter move, just like we were talking about with Yoke. That's the one he'll take when you overload. But with Wemby in there, you almost don't have to do it. And I feel like the 3 Shea is taking are less creating separation or less I got you on your heels, forward, backward, what am I doing? And more, they know you're not going forward. We got a monster back there protecting the rim. We know that part's safe, so we can press into you. And as a result, he's shooting 17% through 3 games from the three-point line through 3 games against the Spurs. 3 of 17. And again, I think it's one of the reasons that Oklahoma City offense stalls is you take away one of their most important counter moves.
Yeah, the important detail there, I'm so glad you brought up the form, because his form is a little bit down in front of his head. He kind of comes up in front of his head on his shot. And so he does rely heavily on separation. This is not Anthony Edwards who's elevating and his release point is 9 feet off the ground. You know what I mean? There's a little bit of especially with the step back 3, which he shot really well this year. He shot the step back 3 well, but his step back 3 is very dependent on defenders being on their heels. And then he hits you with that little in and out dribble that kind of it's almost like a jab step, but off the dribble. He'll jab at you with his right foot while he hits you with it in and out with his left hand. And he counts on you taking that step back and getting a great deal of separation so he can settle into that shot off the dribble. And he's had not just some misses, some bad misses from 3 where he's been way off outside the rim on his pull-up 3. And he's had to take some more dynamic off the move pull-up 3. So when Shea can really settle into that step back, he's deadly. But if you make him really get off the move, against the drop coverage, if he's getting that left, right, moving to his right into a pull up, that's where the percentages start to tank a little bit. And the Spurs just play him into a higher shot difficulty there. I think that absolutely plays a role.
And then to your point about the runoffs for everybody else that is shooting shots. Well, first of all, the Thunder are so dependent in games like this, and I think it'll be true in playoff games, on the shooting of guys like Lou Dort and Alex Caruso. And obviously Caruso, it took him forever to make one. And when he did, he kind of did the laugh to himself. Finally, I made a wide open 3. But it is a variable where you say, In a playoffs, a team can do a million things well, but you get into a playoff series and a team might force you to do one thing well and say, well, this is the scab we're going to pick at. How do you do? And some nights Caruso is going to go 4 for 4 and it's just going to break the game wide open. But when he struggles, you see what happens. You can force the ball into his hands in specific spots and say, yes, but are you willing to keep doing this as he continues to miss? And that's what, and San Antonio, not only do they have the ability to force that because of their rim protection, it allows the perimeter defenders to be a little bit more into you. But then when you do break down the defense and you throw it out, San Antonio built a roster that has, we're going to talk about a lot of ball handling when we get to the other side because I think it's one of the keys to what unlocks them. But they just also have size. Not crazy size, but they have a lot of size to run out and contest those shots. So even when you're open, Lou Dort, Kayson Wallace, Alex Caruso, there's still somebody with length and speed running out at you. And those are the margins that you can take away from Oklahoma City. And when you take them away, they look like they did last night.
Yeah, most of jump shooting in those standstill situations comes down to comfort and confidence.
Yeah.
And so if you can shake a team's confidence to where, like, OKC's been playing with almost what feels like, house money all season because they've been beating the crap out of everybody. So, like, these are a lot of low pressure shots, and like now all of a sudden they're being put back into that environment where it's like, oh man, I need to make this shot. And this guy is kind of rushing me. I can't take my time. And that sort of stuff does tend to dictate those results. And again, it's not a substantial part of their results because most teams are not athletic enough to contain the ball well enough to force them into contested catch and shoot threes, but they have shot poorly on contested catch and shoot threes all season. It's just San Antonio is one of the teams that can actually play them into that dynamic. I believe they were 6 for 15 on unguarded catch and shoots yesterday. That's 40%. And then they were 8 for 16 in the Tuesday game. That's 50%. They're knocking down the wide open ones that they've got in this matchup. They just haven't got enough of them relative to the types of shots that they're getting. And again, like as we kind of transition to that offensive side, before we even get into the ball handling, this team is bigger on the perimeter. They're bigger, faster, and stronger. Like De'Aaron Fox is too fast for Caruso and Dort, and he's too big, like too tall for Kayson Wallace. De'Aaron Fox has looked super comfortable in these matchups. Steph Castle, and like we got to start talking about Steph. Like he is a combination of like big and strong. Like he's built like a fridge at 6'7", but he's also like fast, quick, good footwork, change of pace. There's a level of like mobility, overall mobility with him at his size. I don't think he's going to run into many defenders when he gets into his prime, when he's like 27, 28. I don't think he's going to run into many defenders that can kind of prevent him from getting to his spots. He's unbelievable. Dylan Harper and Keldon Johnson are both feasting on bench units getting into the paint. They get so like the fundamental thing, in my opinion, that breaks this Oklahoma City defense. Because again, guys, they're breaking this defense. They're hanging a 120 offensive rating on them. They're breaking this defense. In order to do that, you have to be able to break them at the point of attack. And that's what San Antonio is doing. They are getting consistent dribble penetration. These guys are getting to their spots over and over and over again. And then the thing that's starting to stand out in a big way is they can really pass. Steph Castle, Dylan Harper, and De'Aaron Fox are all averaging over 6.5 assists per 36 minutes this year. Wemby, when he's catching at the elbows, it's kind of Jokic-esque in the way that he can pull attention off the baseline, which opens up those cutting lanes, and then he can hit those guards cutting along the baseline. And then, one of my big hangups with the Spurs all season or coming into the season was I didn't think they were going to shoot the ball well enough. Since November 16th, which, by the way, they have the best record in the league in that span, 15-3. So if you want to say they're the best team in the league, they certainly have been since November 16th. But in that span, and that, by the way, that's the game after those two Warriors games. So basically the second game that De'Aaron Fox came back. And Wemby's been out for most of that. But in that span, Wemby's shooting over 40% from three. Keldon Johnson's shooting over 40% from three. Devin Vassell's shooting over 40% from three. Steph Castle's shooting 39% from three. The only guy who's shooting poorly is Dylan Harper. And I would argue if you're going to say, oh, some of those guys will cool off, how many wide open threes has Harrison Barnes missed in the last couple of weeks? Or Julian Champagny? Those two guys are both shooting poorly in this stretch, and I would expect both of them to shoot better as time goes on. Like, they are penetrating the defense, kicking out to the right guy every single time, and dudes are knocking down shots. And this is not an OKC thing. They have an over 120 offense. I think it's like 121.5 since November 16th. They're doing this to everybody. They are driving and kicking everybody and killing them.
Yeah. And they're doing it against good defenses. It's not like they're just playing the Utah Jazz 8 times in a row. They're playing some good teams and doing this against some good teams. And that's what makes this run so impressive. But I want to go back to teams have something that makes them special on offense, some way of collapsing the defense. You give it to the elbow, you run pick and roll, whatever it is. What they have, I think, is so valuable. It's twofold. Wemby's just by virtue of his size and his skill set, he has a certain gravity to him that you have to put a body on him. He has once a game, he has one of those Stretch Armstrong plays where you think he's not in position to like step through something and he gets through it and dunks the ball. And you're like, not only did I think he was trapped.
The putback last night in crunch time, I was like, oh my God, where he lost the ball, then just got back and
it picks it up and it gets it.
Yeah, I was like, what in the world?
He has those plays. So he has a gravity to him, but then you don't have to run complex action because they have such speed on the perimeter. I mean, you mentioned Fox. He is a one-man collapse the defense option because he can get by so many people without an action. But all of their guys, it's classic Spurs. The Spurs have going all the way back 15 years, they've been so good at attacking off of the catch when the ball swings. So you try to swing the ball quickly, find the open shooter, but they are so good at running into the catch and then turning a small advantage into a big one. And one way to do that, they did that back in the day with Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, some of the best all time to ever do that one trade, attack closeouts and get into the paint. But now you have all these different guys that can put the ball on the floor comfortably that you are constantly, so you have gravity pressure of Wemby, wherever he is, you kind of have to have, there's a gravity to him. Those guys can all shoot, so there's a gravity to run out on these swing passes. And then there's the gravity of, yes, but they get into the paint and can make the next read, the next pass to open things up. That is such a hard thing to guard, that combination of talents. And it's why I think their offense, we keep saying they did a lot of this without Wemby. Wemby's coming off of the bench. Yes, because that's one of their strengths. Their other strengths is all the speed, length, and playmaking that they have around the perimeter. And even without Wemby, that would be a challenge. You add Wemby, and it's challenges all over the court.
Yeah, they have a half dozen ways of breaking you down. And like I love how you mentioned how like kind of simple their offense is, because it is. And like they're attacking on swings. They'll add like a little flare screen, like those cornet flares off the top have been really hard for defenses to guard. It's just a really simple concept. It just sets up their pick and roll reads against a shifting defense rather than against a loaded up defense. You know, you have De'Aaron Fox bringing the ball up the floor off the left side, and you know Steph Castle's man is going to be kind of hanging out more around the midline. And then they just swing to Steph, and he immediately looks to attack with Cornette screening his man, and he's just getting downhill into the lane, you know, without having to run some complicated, you know, 3-man action or having all these different guys moving without the basketball. It's just they're breaking you down within the first few seconds of the shot clock, getting 2 feet in the paint, and then that guy always makes the right read. And then you've got 3 other high-level playmakers that can all dribble, shoot, and pass on the floor, and they're just extremely difficult to handle. And again, like this is where I want to shout out De'Aaron Fox, because like, first of all, he's been awesome. I think this is the best basketball he's played in his career. And I think it's a testament to how much of a competitor he is, that like he's looking at the situation. He's basically been a stopgap. Like we all know where the situation's going. It's going to be Steph Castle and Dylan Harper in the long run. Who knows? Maybe they keep De'Aaron Fox into his 30s as like an older vet, but like he's essentially a stopgap. And he's either going to be remembered as like Wemby's first great running mate, or as a guy that kind of underachieved or wasn't enough, or just a stopgap. And like, he's like, screw all that. I want to be Wemby's first great teammate. He wants to be remembered. And he's playing awesome basketball, and he's slotted all these guys into more achievable roles and made it so that they always have that. Every single lineup for them has like 2 or 3 awesome dribble attackers. So like, it'll be like Steph Castle and De'Aaron Fox with the starters, and Wemby eventually with the starters. But then it'll be like these Dylan Harper, Fox, Keldon Johnson looks, where like all 3 of those dudes have matchups that they can attack. And so they just always have advantages. They have 2 or 3 advantages on the floor at all times. And so they always feel like they have a leg up on the defense.
I love that tape. Keldon Johnson, by the way, it is funny how good he is for the role that he's now slotted into. To your point, they just have attackers all over the court, guys that can score.
And he's hitting threes.
And he's hitting his shot from outside. All right, I got to ask a couple narrative questions now here. And
really,
I'm going to start
real quick on the Thunder. Just real quick on the Thunder, just really briefly. One thing that's interesting, they have a couple of their old demons popping up to the surface. They've struggled to defensive rebound in these games. They've given up 53 offensive rebounds in the 4 losses. And when we talk about these perimeter defense issues, I think they all come down to that perimeter size dynamic that they were talking about. They have struggled to guard these bigger ball handlers over the years, and that is something that I think has shown up in a big way over this run. They've also had some weird turnover issues. San Antonio has won the points off of turnovers battle in this stretch. So I think it's at least worth mentioning that Oklahoma City has had some slippage in those areas. And then the jump shooting. The wide open jump shooting has definitely been a demon of their past for sure.
Well, and from specific guys, as we mentioned, Caruso, Dort, it's those guys that you know, Isaiah Joe's going to miss some shots. He's going to make some shots. Those guys are the ones that become almost zero sum. But the possession battle is so important for Oklahoma City. It's part of their secret sauce that they just win the possession. They're going to have more possessions than you because they're not going to turn it over as much as they're going to force turnovers, and they're going to limit the boards. You take away those two things, you really are taking away one of their superpowers, and you're seeing that. But let's get to some narrative ones. 2 weeks ago, the Thunder were invincible. And now it's a question of, well, part of this, as super producer James really wanted to try to highlight, he even texted us last night that this is something he wanted us to mention. And I'll mention it. The Thunder had a soft schedule, and they were off to that incredible start. Now, they were winning by 20 points on average, so we're not going to sit here and say it was a fluke. But now that they faced a couple tough teams, Minnesota, the San Antonio, all these times, they're on a bit of a losing streak now. And so now the question is, are the Thunder, are they not as good as they looked early on because of the soft schedule? Or is this more about the Spurs having their number and they just ran into one specific team? What do you think is most likely true?
The data was so absurd at the start of the season that I don't think it was wrong for people to be like, hey, well, the Thunder might be doing something really special here. You know, like, right. And of course you're going to, I mean, what were they, 26-1 at one point or 25-1? Like, you have to at least have the conversation surrounding the fact that they were playing at a level that was historic and they were at least a threat. You're going to at least have conversations around the 2016 Warriors and whether or not they can accomplish that. Although I think it's funny how the 2016 Warriors get propped up as like the team that they're going after. It's like that team lost. You need to pick somebody else for them to go after. But anyway, like what I do think that there is a clear, because we haven't even talked about the Minnesota game. Minnesota very similarly, Ant was able to get to his spots. Julius had a bad box score game, but Julius and Nas were both great in the fourth quarter of that game.
Yeah.
And on the other end of the floor, Rudy Gobert at the rim, athletes on the perimeter making the jump shots tougher. So like it's clear the dynamic is you got to be able to protect the rim, have size on the perimeter against their guards, and then on the other end of the floor, you got to have 3 or 4 good ball handlers that are bigger than OKC's perimeter guys, right? Like that. I think it's more just like, I think it used to be, we came into the season, we're like Denver and Houston. I think we got to add San Antonio and Minnesota as like, not just, like I'd argue if a series took place tomorrow, San Antonio might be favored. Like they might be a slight favorite.
How could they not be favored? They just beat them 3 times. To me, they would be favored in this series. Actually, I don't know what the betting markets would say. You're right. I don't know about that, but I would be taking San Antonio if they played right now, if that was the matchup.
You'd have to. They haven't just won; they've been dominant. Like they had a 15-0 run in the first game in the in-season tournament. They had a 13-0 run yesterday at the end of the first quarter that completely flipped the game. For the last 20+ minutes of that game, they never got any closer than 9. The Spurs hung 43 in the fourth quarter on them on Tuesday and won by 20. Like these aren't just wins; these are blowouts. Like you've got to at least consider that. But I mean, yeah, the point is, San Antonio arguably favored, but I think we got to add Minnesota. Like I came into the season thinking Minnesota couldn't beat Oklahoma City. I think I was wrong about that. I think Minnesota's a threat as well. The point being, Oklahoma City has now revealed themselves as vulnerable. They could still get to 73 wins potentially. It's on the table if no one else can beat now. We'll see. It's going to be really tough now. But the point is like they might get to 70. They're going to be an all-time great regular season team. I mean, this team's not bad just because they lost to the Spurs. The point is, they've shown vulnerabilities. They are not a juggernaut like we thought they would be.
Well, I think, what is it? They've lost 4 of their last 6. I mean, that's kind of a crazy number for a team that was off of such a hot start. But again, 3 of those are to the same team. So take that into consideration. And then on the other side, it's the Spurs. You know, same question, but it's in a different direction. The Spurs, we know, are a very good team. But is it possible they're the best team? Right now, I think everybody's looking at it as they're a very good team who happens to have a good matchup against the best team. But there's other teams, you know, maybe it's a paper, rock, scissors game in the West. But the Spurs have beat Denver. The Spurs have beaten a lot of teams lately that are, you know, very good teams. Is it possible that we haven't seen the full collection of it? And San Antonio is actually the team that right now we don't realize is just the best team in the league.
I just peeked at some championship odds and they have the same odds as the Lakers. That's just What? Like, what in the world are we doing here? Like, at a certain point, that just becomes a great value bet to take San Antonio. Like, now here's the thing: they did lose to New York. This could be one of those things where it's very matchup specific. Like, they just have the secret sauce to deal with the Thunder. But as we talked about, dating back to November 16th, they have the best record in the league. Even if you zoom out on the whole season, they're only 2.5 games back now of the Thunder as the best team in the league. The thing that would always be a question mark for me is just like, you got a lot of young guys without playoff experience going into that situation. And you basically have Luke Cornett, NBA champion. And then you have De'Aaron Fox, obviously, in his one playoff series, where I actually thought he was pretty good against the Warriors. His rim finishing tended to fall off in that series, but I thought that was a good series overall in terms of his Fox demonstrated the ability to keep breaking down Golden State's defense in that series. So there's some things for them to be foundational, but like Wemby's never played a playoff game. Steph Castle's literally a second-year player. Like Dylan Harper's a rookie. There's a lot of youth, and we just haven't seen teams that young succeed in the postseason. But I'd argue them having the same odds as the Lakers is like straight, like batshit crazy.
The Lakers odds are always a little funny. All right, we got to do quick hitters, man, because I know you got to get out of here in 8 minutes. So we're going to be very fast here and talk about the other 3 games. And first of all, the Cavs, they did what they had to do. They needed a statement win, and they got it against the Knicks for about 3 quarters. And then the fourth quarter came along. It might be the most brutal thing that could have happened to the Cavs was to have a big night, a big lead going into the fourth quarter and completely collapse. The Cavs are the sad story in the NBA, I feel, this year. What do you make of them collapsing to the Knicks and losing in the most heartbreaking fashion imaginable?
I'm not going to sit here and pretend like it was a good thing. Their front court continuing to get punked on the offensive glass like they did in that fourth quarter. That's been an issue for years now. I will say though, those are some contested threes from Brunson off the right wing, and even those Kolek threes on the left, I thought were pretty well contested. Like I thought that comeback was as much good Knicks as about anything else. And the Knicks are playing some special basketball. There's something different about them this year. They feel tougher. They feel like they're on a mission. Like I want to give them some credit for that. But I actually left that game pretty encouraged about the Cavs. I thought Darius Garland got great dribble penetration all game, which shows that foot speed thing. Again, it's Evan Mobley's first game back. You still don't have Max Strus in there. I have my issues with their front court, and I think that they're certainly flawed. That's going to be impossible to ignore at this point. But if I'm a Cavs fan, like I felt like yesterday in the morning was one of the first times this season where they really started to show some of that two-way excellence that they had last year.
See, I'm less optimistic about you in part because I think the Cavs, they needed like a mental edge in the regular season. They needed something. And right now I'm with you that I think their team is actually really good, just incomplete. And they've had this like tough year with some key injuries, but I'm not convinced that they are going to only get like 6 weeks of good play and it's like, there it is. That's all they needed this year. I think they actually needed some narrative wins, and I just don't know if they're going to get them this year, unfortunately.
Playing team.
It's what it looks like. I mean, right now, or a trade team, which is even crazier to think that maybe it's a big trade team at the deadline. Rockets just smacked the heck out of the Lakers, 119-96. And just real quick narrative here. The Lakers, unlike the Thunder, it's been the opposite. The Lakers, they too have had a soft schedule. The NBA's did a weird thing where all good teams have played all bad teams early on, and now the good teams are starting to play each other. The Lakers are not measuring up, at least over their last 2. They get smacked. JJ Redick has a meltdown in the postgame afterwards. The Lakers, to me, might be getting exposed here as they hit the tough part of their schedule because they just did not – of all the good teams last night, they looked like they didn't belong.
Yeah, so I think they're better than they look right now, but I think they're either the 6th or the 7th best team in the West in the big picture. And the big thing is, like, early on in the year, Austin and Luka were so incredible that they were able to pull out every single close game because of how good those guys were on offense. But now Austin's hurt. Luka's gone down a level. Here's a crazy stat for you, Adam. Luka is averaging 9 fewer points in losses than he is in wins this year, and he's shooting below 30% from 3 in losses, and he's averaging 4.9 turnovers per game in losses. Luka has not been pulling the Jokic and backpacking his team through some of these stretches. And then LeBron, I thought LeBron literally had one of his worst defense and rebounding games of the season last night. He just seems uninterested in doing the dirty work, which this team actually desperately needs him to do. Now that Austin's out, I have a feeling he's going to have to do even more scoring, which is going to probably cause him to be even lazier. And all of this has shined a giant spotlight on the fact that Rob Pelinka has built a roster In the modern NBA, you need athleticism and shooting to succeed, and this roster is somehow utterly devoid of both. I think the Lakers need to fire Rob before the deadline, because if they let him continue to run this, let him run this team, he has never once in the years that he's been in control of this franchise demonstrated any semblance of a basketball identity or any semblance of an understanding of what works in the modern NBA. I think they got to get rid of him before it's too late. If they let him keep captaining the ship, I think they're going to end up getting a Luka trade request in a couple of years if they don't.
Well, I want to pull on that thread, but we don't have time. So I guess I'm going to have to tune into your Lakers show that's coming on, right? What's it called?
Lakers Collective.
Collective.
I went scorched earth on the Lakers on my show this morning. So just go over to Hoops Tonight. There you go.
Well, I'm telling you, man, I just watched them and I'm like, that's spot the fraud in the group. And I think I spotted it. I think that's the one. Everybody else impresses in one way or another. And
I think the Warriors might be better.
Well, the Warriors, good segue here. And actually, we don't have time to get into the Warriors too much. Maybe you have a quick hitter. Warriors beat the Mavs 126-116. But here's my last take, and then I know you got to get out of here. I watched Cooper Flagg just dismantle Denver. Yes, Denver was shorthanded, and their best defender, Aaron Gordon, was not available, obviously, for this game. The Luka thing is tough because you lose him, and I know that it lingers, and I know that it always is going to be part of the conversation. My take is Cooper Flagg is good enough to require all of your attention. And it's not that you can't compare and say, yeah, but I'd still rather this or still rather that. Cooper Flagg is a good enough player at 19 years old for you to buy into whatever it is he's going to do in his tenure in Dallas. He's that good. He's growing at an incredible rate, and he's unique. I love players that don't – you try to comp him to somebody. There isn't a comp, I don't think. There's soft comps. He's kind of like this, kind of like that. But he is dominant in all these weird ways. His motor is incredible. He plays so hard, and he's exciting. That guy, whatever you feel about the trade and how it went down, if I'm a Dallas fan, I think I officially can turn the page because I'm just so curious what's on the next page for Cooper Flagg.
Yeah, first of all, real quick, my only Warriors take is after having tonight off and tomorrow off, they will have played only 6 games in a 21-day span. So maybe this is what this older team needed to take a deep breath. I actually think the Warriors are going to go on a run now, but we will see. That's for a conversation for another day. Cooper in his last 6 games is averaging 28, 7, and 6 on 53% from the field and 35% from 3. These are like unbelievable numbers. And, the guys I keep thinking about, I kind of am putting him in this box with like Jaylen Brown and Denny Avdia, where like when you have a big forward that has like real size advantages, but is also like downhill fast and then can counter it with something, whether it's Jaylen Brown's mid-range shooting or Cooper's so good with those floaters and push shots, and Denny's really good at getting to the foul line. And then all 3 of those guys have shown real growth as a passer. I think Jaylen's probably at the bottom of that list, but he's shown growth this year. When you have that combination of size and power downhill with something to counter it from the perimeter and playmaking ability, it's just really difficult to manage in this league because there's so many small guards to attack, and these bigs are too slow for it. So they always have 2 or 3 mismatches they can attack at all times. And man, Cooper, that was a brilliant game he had there against the Nuggets. Like he just was
brilliant.
So confident in his 3-point shot and that downhill force and the athleticism around the rim. Like if you're a Mavs fan and you're watching the Lakers spiral and you're watching Luka play some of his worst healthy basketball of the last few years and Cooper looking this good, I'm not saying you're happy about the trade, but you got to be at least like seeing a light at the end of the tunnel.
I just think you can fully move on because why continue to look at the thing you don't have when what you have requires all of your attention? And that's just how I feel about him. He requires all of your attention because he's that interesting to watch and has that much upside. JT, we did it. We got you out here.
It was a great show.
It was a great show, man.
Yeah.
The NBA delivered for us and gave us some great games, and we were able to hit on all of them. Guys, you can check him out over at the Volume Hoops Tonight, Lakers Collective as well. If you want to suffer through some Lakers talk, you can go over there. I'm the biggest Lakers hater. You guys know that. Do me a favor, hit that like button for us on the way out. Make sure you're subscribed. Me and Legler are back on Monday. We'll see you then.
We all silly like the mayor.